What's up, guys? Welcome to Eggs. This is Mike. Thank you for tuning in. It's crazy. We're hitting our year mark right now. Believe it or not, we've been doing this for 52 weeks in a row, and today we have a special episode with an awesome guest. And to start things off with the new year, we're starting it off with a new song, or a new intro theme song kind of thing, and this is it. What do you think? Email us, tell us. We need to add some lyrics to this area. That's why I'm talking over it right now. But this bunch of loops that I put together and kind of arranged into a song. And right now, like the bass line and just the drums, this is usually when we introduce our guest. And it'd kind of fade out a little bit. And Ryan be like, hey, this is who we're talking about today, and this is what we're doing, and yada, yada, yada. And so with that, Ryan, who are we interviewing today?
On today's show, we have Ryan Carson. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Team Treehouse, an online learning platform geared at teaching individuals the skills they need to jump directly into the job market and find work as web designers and developers. We're really lucky to have him and thrilled for the conversation. So without any further ado, meet our guest, Ryan Carson.
Hey, everybody. Excited to be on the show. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for making the time to come on the show. We know you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate you scheduling us in. Before we get into the meat of the conversation, though, on a personal level, I want to say thank you. Treehouse is an amazing product, and it's opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I love the fact that you're doing stuff like Talent Path as well. Everything that you do is just amazing. So thank you for that. And yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I'm honored to serve people like you and others. And I literally can't believe this is my job, helping people. So I jump out of bed every day, just happy to do what I'm doing.
Well, and it's funny because, you don't know Mike's background, but he's basically taught himself web development over the last 3 or 4 years, thanks in large part to Team Treehouse. And also myself, like I work in the advertising business. I'm a creative director on the art side, but I direct a digital team that does art development and web design and all that stuff. And I actually years ago, even in my own company, was using Treehouse in the early days for more business stuff than programming. But we used it to even train some of our employees in Spain on programming and some, very basic programming and things. And we found the platform to be just awesome. So
it's so cool. You can't tell I'm smiling a lot right now. So I appreciate that.
Well, I actually started with a few of your competitors who I won't name. But when I switched over to Treehouse, it was a rewarding experience for me because the competitors didn't have their classes really laid out very well. I didn't know what I needed to learn. And when I switched to Treehouse, I was able to jump on a track, like I want to learn front-end development. You have it structured where I can just jump at the beginning and kind of work my way through. I didn't have to know what I needed to know and to do what I needed to do,
Right.
Yeah, and more recently they even launched their tech degree product, and we can talk about that a little more later. But basically, it's a college education on programming.
Yeah, we just don't want you to have to know what to know in what order. We're a school. We should make it very clear and easy for you. So it's nice to hear you say that that's working because that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate that.
I seriously spent like a year learning obsolete technology. Like I started learning PHP, which isn't necessarily obsolete,
right?
But
it's not the bleeding edge.
It's not Node.js or React,
nice,
or JavaScript. But I love the system because A, I learn it, and then B, you quiz me on it,
right?
Which is awesome because like if I don't get it, I don't just keep watching the videos. I have to take a test to move on.
Well, and that was my experience with Treehouse too. Just the interface is great. The personalities on it are great. All the way down to just the way it feels to use the site versus some of those unnamed competitors.
Yeah.
The UI is significantly better and much more user friendly. I think it just makes for a better online campus.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Anyway,
and just so all you listeners know, I'm not paying them to say these things. This is all genuine, which is really cool.
That is freeform ask history at its best.
Yeah, appreciate it so much.
So let's go ahead and transition into the interview if you feel sufficiently ass-kissed.
Let's do it. Let's
can we talk a little bit about just where you came from, when you where you grew up, and if there was maybe a pivotal point in your youth when you decided technology was the road for you?
Yeah, you bet. So born and raised in Colorado, really lucky to have wonderful parents that supported me and took care of me. I was going through high school in, 92 to 96. And that's when the internet started to happen, like in its very formative age. So I was lucky to have a teacher. And it's funny, she was the most uncool teacher at the whole school, but she changed my life. And she, walked up to me in the hallway one day and said, have you ever tried programming? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And she said, well, it's where you tell the computer what to do. And I was like, wow, okay, that sounds fun. And she said, yeah, we have a class, you should take it. And so I tried it. It was Turbo Pascal, which is super sexy and cool. Anyway, and that was the moment, that my world was opened up.
Did it just kind of click for you, or?
It was sort of. I mean, it was just exciting to create something from nothing. This you have an idea and then you kind of write this story, and then all of a sudden, the computer is doing things for you. And I'm not actually really technical or really scientific or math based or anything. I'm more creative, and that spoke to my creative side. So ignited my imagination.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've never considered myself a mathematical whiz or the analytical type.
Right.
I feel like I'm getting that way because I'm paying more attention to it. But having you reaffirm that, saying I'm more of a creative, it actually makes me feel like I can actually do this, which is
right. Yeah, you don't need to be some math whiz. I mean, it's just a total lie, right? Everybody in technology is actually a creative, person. And so if you are listening to this and you are excited about technology or all these jobs that pay a bunch of money, or people are starting companies in tech, you do not have to be great at math or science. It really is just creativity. It's like writing a screenplay. And there are so many jobs and opportunities. So that's exciting.
So to sort of continue that line of thought, so you went to Colorado State, obviously being from Colorado, that seems logical.
Yeah, I did.
And you got a degree in computer science, but this is something we've talked a little bit about on this show, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective, because basically at this point with Team Treehouse, I mean, Colorado State and any university is more or less your competitor. So I was curious what you thought about sort of the importance of a traditional education, going the route you went, versus, something online, training yourself, learning a skill. And then what you think the future of education looks like. If it's more like Treehouse, specialized resources on the web or wherever that teach specific education, or is there going to be a place for college in the future?
Right. So I think if you can go to a great college without student debt, you should do that. So if you can get into Stanford or MIT or Harvard or any of the top tier schools, and you're not going to take on student debt, do it. I think that's clearly going to be an optimal path, because the world is set up for you at that point, But the brutal truth is most people can't do that. They're going to be like me, who I'm already super privileged. I grew up in this. I'm a white man. I have all of the cards, stacked for me. But I went to Colorado State and got a computer science degree. And it wasn't even optimal, because it turns out that once you become an adult like all of us, and you're working in the industry, you realize after that first hurdle, that first job, no one cares about your degree.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives here in Salt Lake. He's a senior web developer, and he was saying, once you have that 2 years experience, the paper doesn't matter anymore.
None of it matters. It's just so crazy how we're funneling kids towards this expensive kind of learning vacation. Where you rack up $30,000 to $40,000 of debt, and you become sort of an indentured servant for the rest of your life. It just is, it's kind of weird. So it angers people when I say, don't go to college.
Yeah.
And I decided not to fight that battle. It's like, okay, if you are determined to send your kids to college, or if you are determined to go to college, or if you went to college, that's okay. But what's going to happen is as soon as you start applying for jobs, it's going to be all about what you can do.
Yeah.
It's going to be about your emotional intelligence. And it's going to be about stackable skills. So I think we're moving towards a model where a lot of folks are realizing that if they can create projects and build things, they can get into the door. And then after that, the college experience doesn't matter as much. And if you want that well-rounded kind of liberal arts side of education, which is really valuable, you can actually get it for free at Coursera, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can get a Harvard education for free at Coursera. So why not do that, but then pick up the trade skills that you need to do your job and get paid, at a school like Treehouse or something like that. So I think that's kind of where we're moving.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because I kind of went down a similar path. I studied audio engineering at a community college in Seattle. And, I enjoyed it, but I racked up 20 grand in debt, and I haven't found a job in the industry yet,
And that's the normal story. Like, it's you and millions of other people. And I actually did the math on this. So I'm a nerdy kind of finance closet guy where my dad was a financial planner. So I love nerding out about retirement savings and stuff like that. So I thought I want to actually run the math on this and figure out what happens to somebody if they go the college route or they don't. What happens to their total net worth throughout their life. And it's pretty basic. So say that you have Billy. Billy goes to college, accrues 30 to 40 grand of debt. And then he gets a job. And then you have, Tamikwa, who she gets a job straight out of high school. What happens to their net worth? Because Billy, the college grad, will start making more money right out of college, yes, but he also has 30 to 40 grand of debt. So
that he's going to have to pay
he
off.
has to pay off. And so Billy is actually not going to save into his 401k because it's $300 to $400 is the typical monthly student debt repayment. Mm-hmm. And that's enough money for almost all of us that you're going to not also save into a 401k. Right.
Yeah.
It's just too much. It's like, gosh, I just need to pay down my student debt and then the rest I can survive on. So Billy is making more money when he starts, but he's not saving for retirement. And Tamikwa is making money right out of high school. Now she's making less money. She may be able to get a job that pays her $50,000 a year as a junior developer. But she is going to immediately start saving into her 401k, and she's also her salary is going to also start climbing. And so eventually Billy and Tamika will make the same salary, but she will have been earning for 4 years when he's going to college, and she would have been saving to her 401k from the beginning. And I'm assuming Billy is not going to pay into his 401k until he's about 40, because that's typically what happens. People don't pay off their student debt till they're 40. Mm-hmm. So the lifetime difference in how much money they will make is $2 million.
Wow. That's just the interest working for them instead of against them.
Right. It's so simple. Like this is math, based on real life. And yet we're telling all of our kids that you should get a degree because it's the way to be happy. And it's just not true anymore.
Yeah. The funny part for me is when I was in college, they would actually send me home and have me study online. Right. Yeah. It's like, to be honest with you, I didn't even get my degree. I didn't finish it. I'm like a few credits short. And the reason I didn't is because I figured out I could do it on my own. Why pay the bill?
It just doesn't make any sense. And I don't want anyone who's attached to, colleges, who works at colleges, they're all wonderful people. I mean, you have hardworking teachers.
Oh, yeah. Some of the people I met in college are going to be my best friends for life.
Right.
They're great connections that I'll have the rest of my life, which is awesome.
So they're
But at the same time, you got to weigh it out. You got to determine if the education that you're getting is worth the expense, and it's
right. It's usually not. So I don't want anyone to hear us saying all in working at colleges or part of that system are bad or evil. You're not. It's just the system hasn't adapted.
Yeah.
So there's a better way. And so let's go positive. Okay. So, there is a better way. And whether it's Treehouse or anything else, it turns out you can get the skills you need to get the high paying job, for a fraction of the price in a fraction of the time while you live your life instead of, having to pause it. So we're moving to a good place. And I think the world, it unlocks all sorts of possibilities for folks who were locked out of tech before. So we're moving to a cool place.
Yeah, that's awesome. So coming out of Colorado State, can you tell us a little bit about your first gig after college?
Yeah. So I grew up, my whole life in Colorado, and I thought, I should go live somewhere else because who knows what I don't know. And, I'm surrounded by people that believe the same thing I do. So let's just go somewhere else and see what happens. So I watched a film, the best movie ever made, called Notting Hill. So if you're not a romantic comedy fan, it's basically
is this where your love for the British began, or is that as a result of marrying a British woman?
I think it's a mix of the two, maybe. Jill will not want to hear that, my wife. But, so I just thought, England looks fun, and it looks like Hugh Grant's having fun over there. So maybe I'll move there and see what happens. And turns out that was really naive. That's like moving to New York after you've seen, Jay-Z and how his life is amazing there.
That's not how it works out for every New Yorker.
Right. I'm not going to live like Jay-Z. What's going on? And so moved to England, and I actually, a recruiter got me my first job because I thought, I don't know how things work over here. Let's just pay a recruiter to get me a job. And so my first job was for a small web development company in Cambridge. And it was hilarious because they said, okay, I guess you know how to code, so we're going to hire you. But you're going to do this thing you've never done before. I learned C++ and all these advanced things. And they said, you're going to learn this weird language called Cold Fusion. And there you go. Have fun. So,
alrighty. Okay.
Right. All right. I can do that. And so that's when it struck me, what the heck just happened? My parents just shelled out like $40,000 for this degree. And I just showed up at this job and they told me I didn't need any of it. As long as I knew how to code, I could do the job. So that's when the seed of Treehouse was planted, that something's wrong. I don't know what's going on here, but I think something's really messed up. And so then fast forward 10 years and I started Treehouse to try to solve that problem.
Huh.
So can we talk a little bit about sort of your first product, your first app? So before you got into Treehouse, you did other things. Can you talk a little bit about that path?
Yeah, you bet.
Sort of, so obviously you must have had sort of that entrepreneurial bug, and at some point you transitioned from working for someone to working for yourself.
Yep.
And that whole process. Can you just talk a little bit about that move and that shift?
You bet. I'll walk you through it. So I actually wasn't one of those kids that, opened up a lemonade stand, to make money, and I didn't sell baseball cards, or didn't, try to make a profit on selling candy in the schoolyard. I was never that person. So what happened, and I want to encourage people listening, like if you don't feel like you're some crazy entrepreneur, who's, die hard, then that's okay, because that's the way I was. What happened to me is I was working at a web design company in London, and my boss was kind of a dick.
Okay.
And he was kind of mean, and he just, he kind of took advantage of all of us. We were working really hard, building all this stuff for the clients, and we were just, there was no thanks or no gratitude or no support. And I ended up kind of thinking, gosh, this person is, driving really expensive sports cars and, ironically playing golf with Hugh Grant. So seriously, that's one of his life's weird twists. And I just thought, this is just, I don't get it. What he does doesn't look that hard. We're doing all the work. I bet I could build a product or do something and make a living. How hard can it be? And I was really motivated by a guy named Jason Fried, who runs a company called Basecamp. And at the time it was called 37 Signals. And they were blogging a lot about how they had built, a software as a service, recurring revenue product on the side. And it eventually grew and became, enough to support all of them. And I thought, I know how to code. I bet I can, build an app that solves a problem that pays me enough to, make it on my own. How hard can it be? And so I just started kind of working at, nights and weekends. I didn't have kids. Jill and I weren't married yet, so I just had a ton of free time. And so I looked for a problem that I could solve. And back in 2000, what was this? 2003, 2003, you couldn't send large files over email.
Yeah, I remember
that. Literally, you couldn't send anything over like 2 megs. And so I worked in this design studio. We had to send these large Photoshop files to our clients to get approval. And we couldn't do it. And so I thought, I bet I can solve that problem. So I just started, digging around on the internet, started reading books about how to make a web app and built this really kind of clunky solution. And then at some point I thought, you know what, I'm going to go see if I can get anyone to pay me for this thing. So I started talking to a couple friends who had this problem. They owned web design studios. And finally I got one guy to pay me £3,000 to install this kind of software for them at their company. And as soon as I did that and he gave me the check, I quit my job. I was
wow.
like, I'm out.
That's crazy.
And that 3,000 pounds covered rent in London for 1 month.
Right. It was right. It was like I could survive, for a month, and let's just do it. And so at that moment, I told Jill I'm gonna quit, and then we also decided let's get married. So did it all at the same time. Quit my job, got married, and then started this company, which eventually failed. So that was fun. And
that was called Flight Deck.
Flight Deck. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, I think you sort of hit on a topic that I wanted to get into a little bit with you. So I think, especially now in this day and age, makes me sound old, but nowadays with social media and everything, it's really easy to focus on the success. You mentioned, how Jay-Z's living in New York, so I think it's really easy for people to get envious of folks who are doing well, who've accomplished something, like yourself. And I think most of the people don't know the backstory or don't care to find it out. They don't investigate the trials and tribulations it takes before actually achieving success.
Right.
Most of what seems like an overnight success isn't. And so I wondered if you would talk about your experience with failure, and sort of how it helped you along the way, what sort of, lessons you could learn and how it might have steered you.
Yeah, boy.
It's a big question, I know.
There is. No, it's a good question because we all are tempted to believe that successful folks were always successful or always knew they were going to be successful or always knew how to be successful. And it just isn't true. And so what happened to me is, I saw the folks at 37 Signals and Basecamp succeeding. I knew it wasn't going to be easy because they were pretty honest about that. But I thought, okay, we're going to launch this product called Flight Deck. I'm going to sell it to companies who are trying to send large files, and it's all going to be great. We're going to be millionaires. And then what I realized is, I wasn't quite sure how to price it or market it or sell it. I was great at being a developer and building the thing, but I didn't know how to sell it or market it. So I sort of, I felt like I was walking around in the dark, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And it was tough.
Well, you talked about having some naive optimism in an interview that I was watching. And I have a lot of the same kind of tendencies. I'll jump off the cliff without looking down first, and then realize what I'm jumping into and try and climb back out.
Right. Well, I guess we need to build wings before we crash. And it's good. I would have never started any of these things if I knew how hard it was going to be, but I started it. And I think I would encourage everyone listening not to overthink it. If you have your basic needs met, you've got enough money to eat and you've got a roof over your head. Okay, the worst that can happen is you could go back and do your old job. So that's the mentality I had, and started to try to sell this thing. And what ended up happening is I didn't know how to do sales and marketing, business to business. So this product really was something that a business needed to buy, not a consumer. And I didn't really know how to do that. I had never done sales. The one time in my life when I tried to do sales was in college, and I remember cold calling people, and I quit after one phone call where this guy just said, "Is this a sales call?" And I was like, "Yes." and he said, "F you," and I was like, "Okay, I don't like sales. I don't want to do that anymore." So I thought, I'm bad at sales. I don't want to do that. And so what slowly happened is I sold, maybe one deal, and then it would be weeks and weeks until the next one. And eventually one day, I remember it was lunchtime, and I worked from home by myself in our kind of attic, a guy with a computer in an attic. And I just remember thinking, okay, it's lunchtime. I'm going to go eat. So I went downstairs to eat, and I thought, maybe I'll just watch The Matrix, just for, I'll just take like a little break, and then I'll get back to work. And then after I did that, I realized, wow, okay, something's really wrong here. I'm avoiding working. I think I'm depressed. I don't know how to solve this, and I'm not sure I'm going to figure it out. And it was a dark place to be, alone, trying to figure out how to sell something, it not working. And I remember later that night, I just sat down with Jill, and I was like, I showed you all those spreadsheets where, the graphs are going up and to the right, and we were going to make a ton of money and everything was going to be great. I don't think it's going to happen. And she was, loving and kind, and she's like, well, okay, let's figure it out. Like, what do you want to do? And what's next? And so thankfully I had someone there to support me, and help me through that. And so we pivoted to something else, and I was like, wow, I don't want to go get a job yet, and you've got a job, so you're paying our mortgage. So that's great. And I realized, well, what I'm really passionate about is helping people. There's something deep inside me that makes me happy. It's not necessarily money. It's something else. And so, well, why don't we teach people how to code? Because if they can code, they can get a job. And so we booted that idea up, and it was really simple and really, basic. We found a smart person, had them teach a class in person, and we sold 30 tickets, and we just tried our first one in London, emailed all of our friends, and it sold out. We had 30 people show up. And that was like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something here. So totally failed at the first company, and then, figured out, well, I'm passionate about this thing. Let's try it. And it worked. So it's definitely not a straight line, up and to the right.
Huh. That's crazy. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's talk about the process of launching your first app. So, tell us about maybe some hurdles you had to overcome, such as, I don't know, traffic, scaling for the site, expenses you didn't expect, hiring your first employee, all that fun stuff that comes with the territory.
Yeah, you bet. So what we did is once we started making enough money with that kind of in-person training company, what we decided to do was try to figure out if we could scale it by taking it online. Maybe we can help more people if we do this online. So the way we did that was I hired a developer actually to build the first version of Treehouse, and used the designer that we were already working with at my previous company. And what's interesting is, looking back, everything was built in kind of like cardboard. It was not, some, massively powerful, stable, platform. It really was just pieces of cardboard kind of put together and, with a veneer of, design on top, not because we didn't want to be quality, but just because we couldn't really afford more than that. And we didn't know it was going to work. So a lot of what we did is we built on, we used, I think it was something like Chargeify to do the recurring billing, or maybe it was called Recurly. There was basically early on we used a service to do the recurring billing for us, because that's hard. You don't want to mess with that. Now you can use Stripe or Braintree or any kind of solution like that. So that worked. And then, we tried to figure out how do you do video and how do you host it and how do you, deal with stuff, falling over when there's too much traffic. And the truth is it was messy. And some of it didn't work right. And we did have bugs and errors and problems and looking back, it was a mess. I think that's what everyone should hear about all this is that no matter what your idea is and how hard you work at building it, nothing will go to plan. And that's okay. It's better just to accept it and try to survive. And then over time, you can make the platform more solid and more stable, and you can build out your systems and processes. You can fix all that later, but just get it out there and start learning is the key.
So what are your thoughts on sort of the mentality of doing an MVP?
Oh, boy.
I've seen some stuff recently. Yeah, I've been reading. Well, we did a couple app launches, me and some of our team, and nothing major, nothing that ever really went anywhere, but they were done as part of the startup weekend programs.
Yep.
And the purpose of Startup Weekend is to get that MVP over the course of the weekend. And I don't know, I would just be curious what your thoughts are on that. Just because I've been hearing sort of differing opinions lately. Yeah,
I think you have to do an MVP, a minimum viable product, because the problem is you overthink it otherwise. So what we do still now is we say we build in cardboard and we test and then we build, in concrete after that. So a good example is this new product we have called Talent Path. So I had the realization, we are hiring mostly white males at Treehouse, even though I believe in diversity, even though I know it's the right thing to do to, hire people of different colors and genders and points of view. For some reason, I'm not doing it. Like what is going on here? So I dug into it, and it turns out, that we needed to change a lot of things at Treehouse. So what we started to do is we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, and we said, can you please give the message to your amazing community that Treehouse wants to invest in them and needs them, and we'll hire them as apprentices. We don't require a college degree. We will invest in you. So they did that, and we had this amazing group of folks come out of the Boys and Girls Club, out of high school. And then we invested in them by giving them access to our tech degree, which is our online boot camp. And we mentored them. Boys and Girls Club mentored them. And then we hired them as apprentices. And I want to emphasize, the reason why I'm talking about this as an MVP is because I was basically building this product live, for us.
Just trying it out. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know if this is going to work, but like, let's just start working on it and, let's put the pieces together,
First off, props on going to the Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you.
That is awesome.
It's been eye-opening.
I've heard amazing things.
I mean, it's amazing. It is mind-boggling. And this is why, again, I get kind of emotional about college and requiring people to go to college and all this stuff is, there's a huge group of folks that are never going to study computer science, because no one in computer science looks like them. No one's telling them to do that. I was lucky to have a teacher who said, you should learn programming, and because Bill Gates was white, and a billionaire, I could look up and say, oh, he's like me, I can be like him. But if you're Black or if you're Latinx, there's no one like you in tech that you can see. So you're never going to choose it, right? But you have all this potential, right? So working at the Boys and Girls Club has been mind-blowing because the apprentices that are coming out of there are, gritty and hardworking and friendly and kind, and intelligent, as you would expect. But they didn't have that chance. So circling back to the MVP, it was like, well, okay, let's see if we can build this new talent pipeline for ourselves and let's figure it out. And it worked. And we realized, oh my gosh, this is actually a new path to these high paying jobs. And so then I started telling my friends about it. I have a friend who's a VP of engineering at MailChimp. And I said, hey, I know that you're trying to hire diverse talent. We basically worked really hard for a year at Treehouse to do this for ourselves. And it crazily, it works. And he's like, I want to install that. And so it was like, oh my gosh, well, it's an MVP. Like, it's not even really a thing. Let's figure it out together. So then we started, putting some concrete foundations into that and formalizing our process and hiring people, and doing things. So what we did first was figure out how to build the solution to a problem that we understood or we didn't understand, but we wanted to fix. And then once it worked, then we started building, all of the strong foundation to create a solution for other companies. And it turns out, if you take that model of building an MVP and then iterating on it, that's pretty much what we've done the whole time at Treehouse. And I don't really know if there's another way to do it. Otherwise, you risk, wasting a huge amount of money and time building something that you think should work, and it turns out no one wants it or it doesn't work. And then then you're in a bad spot.
Yeah. So in my situation, I've been working on a project for a long time now, and I keep finding things that I think have to be in the initial launch. Or, like the client or the person won't appreciate the actual software, And so it's hard for me to separate and decide, hey, I want this.
Right.
And I don't want that. And what's phase one? What's phase two? What can I hold back? It's just, it's so difficult. I know. It's crazy.
It is. It's hard. That is normal. And nothing wrong with you. That's the normal way to think about it. And what I'm trying to do in general, though, is, I think the reason why this is hard for people is because it feels like you're being dishonest if you are kind of going to, other people and saying, here's a solution to a problem you have. And if you don't feel like you've already built everything they need, then you're somehow being dishonest. But that's not really what's happening. Really what a better way to look at it is approach folks and say, tell me about some of your problems, and then they'll say, I have XYZ problems. And then if you say, well, if we had a solution that solved those problems, would you prioritize, using them to solve the problem? Yeah, we do that. Well, how much would you pay to do that? We'll pay $1,000 to solve that problem. Okay. Do you have the budget? Yeah, we have the budget. And then you can say, well, would you partner with me, we actually are trying to build that. And, we would love to have you as a customer, and we'd love to learn with you and solve that problem for you. Man, that works. And then everybody wins. They're basically funding the development of your product because it solves a real problem, versus you kind of building this perfect shiny box, but not actually going to real people and asking them to pay you to use it. And I've made that mistake. Trust me. I've learned the hard way.
So sort of to that point, or I guess to that end, you've got your MVP. How did you begin building a user base? This is going back a little bit to the launch of Treehouse, but how did you actually roll that thing out? So, because I think for a lot of people, they have ideas, like Mike here, he's got a project he's working on, but it's one thing to have your idea. It's another idea or another step to get it into market. Can you talk a little bit about that experience at the beginning and beginning to build a user base?
You bet. So first, it's important to decide, is this a consumer product or a business product? So, a consumer product will be, thousands of folks signing up to solve a problem. The price point will be lower. It'll be easier to get in. Probably will have a free trial. There's that product. And then there's a B2B product, which solves a larger, more expensive problem where you have fewer clients. Which side of those things would you like me to talk about?
I think consumer facing is probably the most applicable for this group.
So that's what we did for Treehouse in the beginning. So what we did was we actually built a successful blog. So we were running, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we were running this in-person training company where we would hold, a one-day workshop and we teach you PHP. What we realized is we needed a reliable way to do marketing that would drive signups. So we launched a blog, and it was called thinkvitamin.com, and which is a dumb name, but, but whatever. And so it was supposed to be like vitamins for your brain, right? And we just worked hard at content marketing. We wrote great stuff that would appeal to our target market. So that's one of the keys, is get crystal clear in your head about who is the person you're selling to. What's their job title if they have one? What are they passionate about? What problems do they have? How old are they? Where do they live? Get kind of clear about that. And then what we did is we built a blog that would target folks who were learning web design or web development, and that got more and more traffic. And then what we did is, when we were ready to launch Treehouse, we launched it on top of that blog. So we leveraged all of the community we had built to market to. So we actually, the first version of Treehouse was called Think Vitamin Membership, and which is again a terrible name. But the idea was, people will transfer their trust of this blog onto this new product, and it did work. So we launched at one of our own conferences. Hey, we're going to sponsor our own conference.
Yeah, that's funny. That sounds like something
$0. Right. You have a good podcast. So this is something you can leverage. And this is what's smart about what you're doing, is you're building a community and audience. Yeah. And we did the same thing. And so I think on day one, we had something like 3,000 people sign up for Treehouse.
Holy cow. That's insane.
It is insane, but it was like years and years of work.
Well, building up. It's like the iceberg under the water. People see the tip and they don't see the bottom. They don't see all the work you put in.
Well, I think too, one of the things, and it's one of the things that I sort of appreciate the most about you, is that you were able to sort of land on this personal mission statement, for lack of a better term, but this idea that you from the beginning were planning, or it goes something like, my mission is creating the future of education so I can help as many people as possible. But I think building a business that comes from a pure location, something like that, where you're really you've got this little bit of heart and soul in there. It's not about profit. It's not about whatever else. It's this idea of really trying to reach somebody. I suspect anyway, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect that ethic permeated the product from the early days, and which helps in building a dedicated and loyal audience. So when you did transition, these people already knew you, liked you, trusted you, and it wasn't a bridge too far to get them to cross over into following Treehouse.
Correct. Yeah. If authenticity is so important. We are all just too smart now. And right. You're building a community that knows you, that trusts you, that you're authentic with. We had done the same thing. So I think that that's really key. If you, and this is why I always, I'm always banging on about this on social media, finding your why. And what I often say is, it took me 32 years to find my why. And so I want to encourage people listening that you don't have to know right away, what is the thing you're passionate about that you can attach a product to. Mine was a winding journey. Started off with a product that wasn't at all attached to my passion, which is, sending large files. The truth is people are probably sending porn to each other, right? I mean, it was just not something that ticks zero of my boxes, right? But learned something, kind of got my ass kicked on that. And then I sort of pivoted, wow, maybe we teach people how to code somehow. And did that for a while. And then I was like, well, but I feel like we're still only helping people that are already super privileged. If you can fly a plane, to a city and get a hotel room and spend a day, learning how to code, you're already pretty good, and so I'm helping people, but I'm not really helping masses of amounts of people. So let's iterate the idea, so then we took it online and so it's an evolution. And that why really does drive me. And when it gets tough, I pull on that. And people know I'm authentic. You'd have to kill me to get me to stop doing this.
And just to reinforce that point, I mean, the work that you're doing on equal hiring and equal shares and equal, all that work. I mean, it's a little apropos of what's going on in society right now, but I feel like you guys at Treehouse, and you in particular, through this sort of core ethic that, has permeated all that you do, has put you guys sort of on the front of that. You're being very assertive. You're not waiting for business to catch up or whatever. And I think that's something that people should respect and really, take note of, because I do think that is a way to handle sort of society that we live in now without pushing back on it or being angry because people are accusing you of not hiring correctly. I mean, rather than take a defensive status, you're pushing forward, saying, how can we solve this? We know the problem exists and now we're pushing forward. But again, I think it goes back to having found that why.
Right. Amen. Yep. It's great. And I'm fortunate to have found it.
Yeah. Speaking of authenticity, there's one thing that you do that I just love, and it's how you communicate with your employees. It's you send out a video once a month or quarter or however often you do it, but it's password protected, and you seriously you break down the finances and tell your employees why you're doing what you're doing, and and if they're working as a team and they know what the goals you're trying to accomplish, and what you're trying to do as a business, they know what they need to do. They know why they're doing it, and they can see the rewards, of what they're doing.
We're trying to create clarity and transparency, and I haven't always done a great job of this. It's only recently that we've really gotten good at helping everybody understand, what are the big goals that we're aiming for and how are we doing compared to those goals, and then communicating regularly about them. We launched what we call a 2-year vision on January 1st, 2018, and it said, this is where we want to be by January 1st, 2020. And there's a top line kind of 1-sentence statement. This is what we want to have achieved by then. But how will we measure that? Because that's a lofty goal that it's not really a number. And then we broke it down into, actual numbers with clear measurement, and it's been tremendously clarifying. And I've gotten, a lot of feedback from employees. So we have 80 employees now around that. And a lot of them had said, we're so excited to know exactly what it is we're working on and how we're doing towards that. So it's been a very positive thing to do.
Well, and I think, just to stick with the theme, right? This idea of people really buying in and authenticity. I think that transparency, in business and in sort of most facets of life is going to lead to those people really buying in, whether it's a customer or an employee, you're sharing a common set of beliefs. And I think that a great way to run a business.
That's great. I do want to be honest though, and say, there's a lot of things that have been hard to communicate to the whole team and hard to explain. And sometimes, folks are confused about, well, why are we doing that? And how does this fit in with what we're trying to do? So we're not perfect here either. It is hard to really get everybody on the same page. But I think we're doing better. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I think it's about effort, right?
Yep.
I mean, at least you're trying to improve the process. Of course, not everybody can catch the vision at all times, or maybe they've got their own perspectives. But I think the fact that you're sharing the vision and offering that to people, I think is a positive.
Thanks. Thank you.
So one thing that I'd just like to talk about, we've talked to other guests of this show about sort of this similar thing, but I think a lot of people listen to shows like this with guests like you in pursuit of, chasing down their own, in context of this show, chasing down their own egg, but their own business or their own project or their own whatever. And so I wonder if you could talk a little about your sort of daily routine. One of the hot items that gets talked about all the time and bandied about is this idea of work-life balance and prioritizing things. Work is important, but life needs to be important and all that stuff. And we found someplace kind of a breakdown of your day, but I wondered if you would talk about it a little bit and just maybe speak a little bit too to finding that work-life balance.
Yeah,
I mean,
you bet.
It sounds like, you and I are, I think, similar in age, and it sounds like we sort of had the similar ethic where it was killing yourself and busting your ass when you were young, and now you can sort of do a little more of this work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have worked hard, and really ground it out first in order to appreciate things later. But I know that a lot of people have trouble finding that balance.
Yeah,
so if you'd speak to it.
Let me tell you the story of kind of how I evolved in that. So back in 2006, when I was working it was just me. In my top bedroom, I had finally convinced my wife to join the company. We started doing these events around the world, and they were working. And I was like, will you quit your job and join me? Because we'll have a lot of fun. And so she did. And so we had this one. I think it was like a Friday. One day we were sitting around, and something happened. And I think she or I said, why does everybody work a 5-day week? How does this happen? And we're like, I don't know, maybe you don't have to do that. And so we thought, well, screw it. Let's try to work a 4-day week. And let's work less because we can be more effective if we're more focused. So we started out this journey of not working Fridays, but it was just us. We didn't have any other employees. And so I was working 32 hours a week at that point. I really focused a lot on trying to work less, but be more effective for a long period of time, for 10 years. So I feel like I had really extreme, kind of work-life balance, more on the life side for a long time. And then I had something happen, which was interesting. I basically, a business tried to buy Treehouse. And we, went through some of the talks, and was considering doing it because I thought maybe it would help us to reach more people and help more people. And ended up not doing it, sort of deciding, I don't think this is the right partnership for us. This isn't the right thing for our students and for the companies we serve. So I'm not going to do it. And I had a phone call with the CEO of the company, and it was like 5 a.m. or something. I can't remember why, but he could only talk at 5. So, and I'm a morning person, so that was fine. And we were talking, And he said, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to do this. I wish you the best of luck. And it's just not right for us. And he said, Ryan, we're going to crush you. And I was like, whoa, didn't expect that. And I said, okay, well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you're going to build, a big company, but it's just not going to be with us. So, take care. And it just lit this thing inside me. And I just, it was like a switch had been flipped. And I told you I didn't think I was good at sales. And I just like, it wasn't for me, and I didn't like upsetting people, and I'm kind of nice. Part of the reason I wanted to do that deal potentially was because he was a great salesperson. At least I thought so. And I thought he could figure that out for us. And as soon as I said no, and he said he was going to crush me and Treehouse, it just lit this primitive fire inside me, and I was like, whoa, okay. I need to learn how to be a salesperson. I need to lead this company in our B2B revenue work and our sales work and no one's going to do that for me. I got to do it. And at that point, I just decided I'm going to work like crazy. I'm not going to sacrifice my family. That's my one rule. And I'm going to do my best not to sacrifice my health, but I'm going to work like a crazy person. And so I started waking up at 4:30 every day. I was like, all right, I'm going to work on Treehouse down. I'm going to get up, go down to my kitchen. I'm going to work real hard at learning how to be a salesperson and build out our sales efforts. So I would do that for, an hour and 15 or an hour and a half, and just go crazy. And then during the day, I'm just maniacally focused at working really hard, not taking breaks, just pushing really, really, really hard. And then stopping at 6, I stop and I go home and I'm with my family.
You know what? Once again, props. I love this. I was listening in another podcast somewhere where you get up at like 4:30, you do your thing for a few hours, and then at 7 you get up and you have coffee with your wife.
Yep.
I was raised with family values, and it's something I really respect. And I love the fact that you cut it off every night at 6 o'clock so you can come back and be there and have a family life outside of work,
Yeah, it's important, I would not be where I am today without my wife, without her support and without her love. And I need her, and I'm a happier person, if I have a great marriage and she's happier, and it matters, there's all these things. So what I do is, I work extremely hard, but I put, protective kind of barriers around my family. And I really try hard not to encroach on those boundaries. So I don't have, business breakfasts, I don't do business dinners. So I don't do any of that stuff, which is hard. I mean, it does hurt Treehouse. If I worked all the time, we would be growing our revenue even faster. We would be doing that.
Yeah, but what's the point? What are you working for? If you're at work all day, meanwhile your family's struggling and you're not there for them, what's the point?
Right. Yeah. So it's pretty neat because I feel like I have a pretty good balance now. Yes, I work, probably 55, 60 hours a week, but I'm very careful about when that work happens. And so, like you said, it's kind of fun. I go up, bring 2 coffees up to bed, and Jill and I sit and talk for 30 minutes, and the kids, run around and cause trouble. I have 2 boys.
Well, I've got to tell you though, I mean, I appreciate all this family values talk and stuff, but you're,
come on now.
but I need to explain why my kids hate you. So, so you So you published
Dun, dun.
an article back in February about you using burpees for disciplining kids. Well, your kids are about the same age as mine. I have a 7 and an 11.
Nice.
And it sounds like we're going through similar struggles with the younglings. And
Yes.
so a friend of mine, actually, I think Mike here, forwarded me this article on Medium where you were talking about using burpees for disciplining kids. Yes. And it's funny because, I mean, like I said, we're about the same age. And so, I grew up with spankings and all that kind of stuff too. And it wasn't ever a big thing. And that's how I learned. So, I started, down that path with my own children.
Yep, same here.
But I found it's not super effective. It doesn't seem to resonate with them. And it's certainly not hedging any of the problems we're having.
No.
And we have 2 boys. And so they're constantly trying to kill each other. They're just far enough apart in age that it's, WWE every night. And so after reading this article, I sprung that on them. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to be the new thing. And, so far I haven't, attributed this to you in their mind. So don't worry, you won't be getting any threatening emails or anything. But anyway, I thought that was kind of a funny approach to child rearing. And
that makes me happy that someone actually read that and is using it because, so I got that idea from Jocko Willink, who has this amazing podcast called Jocko Show or something. And I actually saw him on Twitter and someone said, how do you discipline your kids? And he said, burpees. And I was like, yes. Oh, I hate burpees. Right. And so one of the things I do to keep healthy is I run Spartan races and we do burpees and I hate them. And so, I remember when I sprung on my kids and I was like, okay, from now on, if you don't obey, then you're going to do burpees. And like, what's that? And I was like, well, it's you do a push up and then you do a little jump in the air and it sucks. So, and you're going to do 30 of them. And they're like, haha, and after they got to 30, they were like, okay, I never want to do that again. And it works.
And it's surprisingly effective. I mean, so far, we're like still being able to use it as a deterrent in our house. And so I showed them, you had a YouTube video or something linked in there, the Spartan guys doing burpees or showing how to do a burpee. And so far that's been all they needed to go, okay, we don't want that.
That's hilarious.
And so, but what's cool about it is it's cut down on the screaming and yelling. It's cut down on the spankings. It's cut down on the frustration.
Right.
All those parts of being a parent that nobody really prepares you for.
Yeah.
And so even though it might have been a little funny or a little, on the side, I'm sure, I've heard enough from Jocko over the last few years that I'm sure it is not funny for him.
Right.
Very, very serious.
Yeah.
These burpees.
Not serious.
But
it is serious. 100% serious.
Although I couldn't imagine being a kid that wasn't just terrified of Jocko.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being his child.
Glad he's not my dad.
I feel like whatever he says is going to be enough.
So I have another dad tip though. This is something we just started doing and it's shocking how effective it is. So, we could not get our kids out the door on time for school.
Ooh, I know what that feels
God.
like.
Okay. So, it's like, no matter what we do, we couldn't. And if you threaten burpees, well, then that takes more time. So it's like, okay, what do we do? And my wife thought of this. And so I was on a short business trip last week and she said, Ryan, I'm doing this thing. It's amazing. So she said, what she does now is say, okay, I'm going to wait by the door at 8:30 a.m. And every minute that I wait for you, you're going to lose 5 minutes of screen time.
Ooh.
And oh my God, like it was instant behavior transformation.
I love
so
that.
they literally are running now around the house like, I only have a minute,
Well, I found, in sort of a limited version of that, we've done things where we set timers to get dressed, beat the clock, that kind of thing, and tried to gamify it a little bit. But I like this, tying it to the screen time.
It's painful, right?
Yeah. Well, my God, I'm a pretty punctual guy. And so for me, especially, I'm tapping my toe, but then I'm getting frustrated and then I'm getting mad and then it's a problem. And it's like, but all you had to do was be on time. All you had to do was leave when we're supposed to leave. We go to school every day.
This is not hard. But it is hard, Dad. Right.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah. There's this comedian. His name's Michael McIntyre.
Oh,
he's a British guy. So
I've
maybe
seen this
him.
one. This is so keep going. This is great.
Yeah. I was just going to say, he's got a whole bit on this, and there's a line in one of his comments, this guide to parenting video he's got out, or this bit, or whatever you want to call it, where he talks about his little boy, standing at the door and they're getting ready to leave. And he goes, Father, today I need to be dressed like a Roman. And it's just, we're like, today? Right
now?
And I can't. and I can't even count the number of times my kids come to me, at the 11th hour and said, "Hey, it's crazy hat day. We need crazy hats." Or, yesterday was wacky day. And so luckily he had the wherewithal to just flip all his clothes backwards. But I mean, it was, "Hey, can you run back to the house and get me some crazy something to wear?" And it's okay. So anyway, so I love that.
Dad stuff.
Thanks for the parenting advice. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So we're getting kind of towards the end of this interview, but there's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about that I think are important for people trying to move their egg along or get into business. And one of the things, and they're sort of, I don't know, combined. So I'll try and lump this into one question. First of all, sort of the importance of mentorships and finding them sort of in your life. We've talked to other experts in different fields and have talked about this idea of mentorship and finding someone that can help you move your needle. And then how that, further relates to developing a professional network. How do you find like-minded individuals of high caliber to build relationships with? They say a lot about your success can be derived from the people you spend time with. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that trap where they're hanging with the one friend that brings them down, or hanging with, maybe they've got, some group of people that are steering them down the wrong path. And so I wondered, I've noticed I saw an interview, an Instagram live with Gary Vaynerchuk. I've seen you with a number of, sort of movers and shakers. And I wonder how much of that was you actively seeking out this network versus just it coming in, as you were all in tech and everybody worked together. What do you think, I guess to sum it up, can you talk about the how to sort of find good people and cultivate those relationships?
Yeah, that's such a good question because it's a game changer. So I absolutely seek out mentors. So I literally just did this. So, I explained I'm building out our sales team here at Treehouse, and I don't know a lot about that, so I'm learning. We're doing pretty good, thankfully. I mean, it turns out, sales is simple but not easy. So we're actually thankfully doing really well. But I also know I don't know what I don't know, and I can't see it because I can't see it. So what I did is I went to a friend of mine who has built, a huge company, and it's primarily a sales-driven company. And what was interesting is I thought, he's super busy. I bet I'm going to have to somehow, pay him or something to be my mentor. I don't know how to do this, And I also have a CEO coach, which is a form of a mentor. And I would recommend anyone to consider trying to get some sort of business coach at some point, because it's transformative. But anyway, I was talking to my CEO coach, and she said, well, just ask him, just ask him if he'll be your mentor. And so I emailed him and said, hey, Henry, you know so much about this. Like, you've literally been doing this for 15 years. And I would be honored, to learn from you. And would you be willing to be my mentor? And, maybe that's like, a meeting every 3 weeks or something where we sit down for an hour and I just learn from you. And he wrote right back and he said, I'd be honored to do that. I was like, what? It's just crazy. And so what I've learned is a lot of times if you ask, people say yes. And I think it's because we have an innate desire as humans to help people and to pass on our knowledge. It also makes you feel good to pass on your knowledge. And so I'm so excited about it. So I'm doing he's already been tremendously helpful over email, but I'm going to do a half day on site with him, I think next week, where I just walk around the office and see how he set up things and learn more and ask him a bunch of questions. So highly recommend mentorship. And, just don't be too proud to ask. Because I made that mistake. Well,
and I think that's a good lesson. It seems like, nowadays with social media that everybody is infinitely more accessible than they once were. But I still think so many people talk themselves out of asking before they, or they've told themselves no before somebody has the opportunity.
And it's, you're not going to get a yes every time. There's definitely been folks I've asked that were too busy. But I've learned eventually, someone will say yes, and that their knowledge can be, not just helpful, but transformative for you.
Yeah. Well, looks like we're getting close to that time. Is there anything else you want to talk about or plug or,
No, this has been so fun. I really appreciate all the kind words about Treehouse. Clearly,
seriously, it's changed my life.
Thank you. That's so.
Yeah, it really is a great product. Not to just start and finish with Ask Kissery, but
I appreciate it. I mean, I've worked my ass off for 8 years to try to build that. So to hear you say that makes me infinitely happy. So,
yeah. Well, I guess a little backstory on me. I've been a DJ for 20 years. It's all I know how to do. And, recently I feel like I'm on this giant hamster wheel of life that I'm just running in circles, never making any headway. And, don't get me wrong. I love my job. I love being the puppeteer
right.
at the nightclub, having people just dance and lose their mind to, supposedly good music that I'm playing. You know what I mean? But I could see the writing on the wall. I can see that, I don't have any retirement. I don't have any savings. I don't have any 401k. I have a bunch of speakers, big bad speakers, but that's about it. And so I decided to go back to school for audio engineering and did that for a little bit and came to realize that there's not much work. You have to be really lucky to get a good job in the audio engineering field. And so I've had this idea about this website project for quite a while. And my roommate a few years ago, I was sitting there and telling him about it. And he's like, why don't you just do it? You're daydreaming all the time. Why don't you just go and do it? And so I jumped online. I was, looking for stuff. And I came across Treehouse. And it was nice to see that I could actually learn this stuff and progress. And actually
so cool.
Work towards a job.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And congrats to you for doing the work. You put in the work to learn, it's hard. But I'm so proud to have served you on that. So we've had, as I've said everything I want to say in this interview. It's pretty fun. So thank you for having me on the show.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, then let's call it a wrap. So the website is teamtreehouse.com. You can sign up there, get your tech degree, or take courses in all kinds of things. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I took how to freelance and brand identity basics and a number of other courses, that weren't even programming related. But the UI and the interface was so great that it's a really fun platform to learn on. So I would encourage anybody to go check that out. And follow Ryan Carson on all the socials. And pay close attention to what he's got to say. I think there's a lot of good coming out of this organization.
Thanks,
and
guys.
Brian
It's been an honor to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much. And we'll see you all next week.